Welcome to Radio Free Will, a podcast for sovereign people. I'm your host, George McCullough, and we're coming at you live and direct from Griggstown, New Jersey. Once again with us is Michelle Mockers, artist, activist, and philosopher. I want to apologize to everyone. We missed last week. Family stuff. The holidays are coming upon us, and a lot of family stuff taking place, but we'll try to keep the podcast going as best we can, right, Michelle?
Absolutely, my dear.
So we're going to pick up where we left off. This will be part 2 of the French resistance, history of World War II.
Yes, and I believe that I didn't give, a real, I should say, summary of the resistance. The resistance, I did not explain exactly what it was. The resistance were a group of people who, wanted to fight against the German. We were going together, but those people has basically no armaments and most of the time no military training. So the number one problem...
They were just civilians.
Yeah, they were civilians who wanted to fight the Germans. But basically, they have no armaments. And the one of the big thing of the resistance was that from England, they sent a lot of British mission, usually made of 3 people. A chef, a sous-chef, let's put it that way, and a radio. And the radio was very, very important because if the Germans were able by triangulation, 3 cars, covering an area, and if they could pick up a radio, so that was a disaster because London could not get back to you, did not know what did happen. It was terrible. So the radio was the most important personage of the British mission. He was not the boss. He was the radio. That's it. So the British mission sent to France had to. Their goal was to provide the armaments, the organization armaments, if you want, of the resistance. So that was possible through the radio, telling them how many men, how many here, what do we need, and they were sending a plane who was dropping some, containers on your head for your weapons. Now, those groups were basically disorganized. They were not military groups. Mm-hmm. They were people, all the voluntary people. So they tried to organize themselves. And in my own area, there was 5 groups. One was, let's say, not less than 800 men. And the 3 others were basically between 2 and 3 men. And one, a communist one, who was exactly 100 men. I had a problem with that communist because when Pearl told me they are asking for 1,000 people, armaments for 1,000 people, and she said, you must go and see him and see what exactly he has in mind. So I went in, I found him, and after a nice little blah blah, I said, hey, you're asking armament for 1,000 people. You don't have 1,000 people. If I count your people in your camp, you are no more than 100 people. He said, we are 100. I said, to whom are going the 1,000 weapons? They wanted to arm the population to make, communist revolution at the end of the war. So that's why, for example, they sent Leclerc to take Paris, not the American. The Americans stopped, and they sent Leclerc because Leclerc was French, and as a French, was able to take over Paris. The communists wanted to take over Paris. So that's why the French sent the French tanks to stop the communists to take Paris. And I had a problem at the end of the war with the communists. But he told me friendly, hey, that's to give armaments to the people we will fight for. Oh, I said, okay, you get 100 guns and that's it. And of course I had 2 guns in my back. Just as I said that.
So they wanted to, after the war, they wanted to do a counter-revolution.
Yeah, communist.
To turn France into a communist country.
The communists, before the war, the communists were 25% of the French population. They were voting 25% of the population. So 25% of the population, they had hope that if they give armament to those 25,000 people, they would take over the government and everything. And they try, in fact, to take over Paris.
That they wouldn't just do that at the ballot box? That they were so upset that they weren't winning that they...
That commanding officer, that he was a nice man, and he told me, you make your war, and we make our war. He told me exactly that. You make your war, we make our war. And I told him, of course, it's not the same wars. So he didn't answer that. He just answered when I refused to give him some armaments to put 2 guns in my back. And I say, ha, ha, ha.
But you didn't have any hard feelings to the communists.
Oh, no, absolutely not. They were nice people. He was a nice guy, but he was trying his game. And his game was not to have the Allied. It was very nice to eventually make a little help, to the Allied. But it was not his goal. His goal was to take over France after the liberation. That was the goal of the communists.
It is amazing that a common enemy will bring different parties together.
Yeah, because, in fact, why did Russia fight back the Germans like that? What was in the mind of Stalin at the beginning? Not just the revolution, just, Russia going, Russia winning. But that was not to really help the Allied. It was basically Russian fighting for its freedom of being communist.
Yeah, it is amazing to me. We're going through a period of McCarthyism 2.0 in the United States right now. Everybody who has a counter narrative, a counter thought, is labeled a Russian.
Yeah.
And what bothers me about that is, you certainly have a lot more history than I do, and I can never figure out why people hate the Russians so much, because they never really have done anything to the United States.
No, and in fact, I don't believe that we were hating the Russians. Just the communism was the enemy, if you were. Not the Russian people themselves. The Russian people are nice people. I know very well many Russian people. We were, in the beginning of the war, we were exiled people. They were very, very nice people. And they were people like you and me. Why not? They are not from another planet.
They just have a different the communists have a different political mindset.
Of course.
But you are proposing a different political mindset.
No,
are you prepared to be called a Russian agent?
They are the only one with, let's say, with a philosophy, with a complete philosophy. Wrong, but philosophy complete. So they go with that. And that was the mind of Lenin. When you read Lenin and when you read, Stalin, when you all those guys, it's always the same thing. The only one who made a mistake and he believed that he didn't really know what he was talking about was Karl Marx. Karl Marx himself, who at a point said, "I'm not a Marxist." And he said that the revolution will happen in Germany, not in Russia. Because Germany was, worker people and so and so and so, factories, blah blah. So he thought that it was easier to make the revolution in Germany than in Russia. He never considered making the revolution in Russia.
Let's get back to the French resistance, and
how
long were you guys together for?
The resistance?
Yeah.
The resistance started with the beginning of the German occupation. But the resistance, I mean really doing something, helping was with the D-Day, We had to try to stop the German by all possible ways, just to embarrass them, to make them, miserable in front of the Allied. So I was in an area very, very, if I should say, interesting for the resistance. That was all the German from the Atlantic coast since Spain, all the Atlantic coast, and they had a lot of installation on the coast. All of them were obliged to pass where we were. That were the road for them to go back to Germany, if they could go back to Germany. And the only railroad next to a few kilometers away from where we were, the only railroad which was still able to go straight to Germany. So we had the passage of a lot of Germans and tanks and everything. Now the Germans themselves, they were completely different. You had the people who didn't want the war, if you can say so, the people who were fed up with the war, and the people who were Nazi, and had up to the last minute, fighting for Hitler, and So it was a completely, you never knew to who you were talking to. Once, for example, you had German, like once I was not supposed to know, I must say something else, that the British mission was not supposed to fight at all. When I became part of the British mission, my boss, Pearl, told me, you are absolutely forbidden to participate to any military action, because we are much more important for the resistance than some fighters. We provide them with what they need. They cannot provide themselves with what they need. So you don't fight.
You were like a middleman.
Yeah, absolutely. I was some kind of a representing, I was the only one who was running all around the maquis, the groups, to provide them. I had two things to provide them: armaments, or I was also in charge of the money, because they were sending money from London, and I could eventually pick up some money in France, and I was the one officially in charge of the money. So the groups needed two things: armaments and also enough to live, to eat. Sometimes they needed a car, so for one reason or another one, I was the one to give a sign of paper for the car, which was reimbursed by the government after the war. But I was in charge of all that, and I was the only one in my area visiting systematically all the groups of resistance to provide them with what they needed. So I had some kind of a, not fighting, if you want, experience of the resistance, but some kind of a representative of the Allied to provide the resistance with what it needs.
It sounds like you were running your own shadow government.
No, something like that. Something like that. So I have stories that, of course, if you belong to a group, the groups were relatively very well organized after a while. And you had the gendarmes, going to the maquis to teach the people how to use their guns and also and so. Mm-hmm. So they were fighting. And the fighting, I told you, I believe, the beginning, the fighting, if they were in a wood, they were coming just out on the edge of the road, because the road was, following the forest, for example. So they were going at the edge of the trees and just shortly fighting against a German convoy which was passing by and retreating. They were not supposed to fight German, regular fight against. You fight against them, the trucks, whatever it is, you destroy all what you can in few minutes and you disappear. And the Germans were fearing that, absolutely fearing that.
And the roads aren't like what people think of today. They weren't paved roads or anything like that, were they?
No.
They were just dirt roads?
There are circumstances like that where people, when we see the D-Day, the 6th of June, everyone, I know, no one of those men, they were, camouflaged, they were, working in some farm somewhere, you could not know existed. And all of a sudden, I went from 11 guys to 100 in 1 week, in 5 days. And that maquis of 800 people, he was something 200 or 300, and all of a sudden he was 800. The men came out from everywhere. They were camouflaged. They get out.
And what ages were the resistant fighters?
Basically, I should say basically between 25 and 50.
Okay.
Basically.
Oh, no, young. How old were you at the time? You were young.
I was 21.
So you were in charge of.
Yeah, because
People
maybe I
twice
had
your
more
age.
imagination than the others. I don't know. I was young. When I think of it, I was 21 and I had men. We were 50 years old.
No teenagers fighting.
I had
laws?
one teenager, younger than me. Her parents took the care to bring him to me, telling me, our son wants absolutely to fight with you. So we give it to you. If there's something, you tell us. He was dead 2 hours later.
He was dead.
Yeah, by accident.
Why? What happened?
One of those beautiful mitraillettes, the gun, how you call them, I forget the name.
Sten?
I don't know, they're manufactured by everybody in England. Anyway. The Sten, the mitraillette Sten. So those Sten, if you didn't know exactly how to use them, there were 32 bullets. If you put 32 bullets, they have 50% chance not to do anything at all. The bullets with too compact to do anything. So if you didn't know that, to put one or two less bullet, it would not go. Besides that, it was an armament. If you wanted to kill somebody in front of you, you had to start far away from the left to go up, because the thing, it was the most impossible armaments possible. It
And
was.
so what happened? The thing backfired on the kid, or
No, not at all. I told him have lunch. It was the time for lunch. So I said have lunch, and he went to sit on a bench, which was a concrete bench, a bench made of concrete, with another guy. And it's the other guy who had the gun in his shoulder, And when they sat, the gun fall down, and that damn machine gun start by itself and kill the other one.
did you have to report the kid's death to
His
the
parents?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Oh, that must have been heartbreaking.
Oh dear, there were few things like that which were no fun. That's terrible, but that's part of that. You cannot say that something like that will not happen. It was terrible. I was very, very, in my position, as I was the chef of that group, I was the one obliged to tell the parents. And the parents say, I give you my son. And the mother told me, I give you my son. So I went to say to the mother, listen, your son is dead.
That
But she
must be
took it. She
heartbreaking.
took it. No, yeah, but she took it relatively well, I should say. I was very surprised, but she was a strong woman, and she said that the destiny, she.
I guess when you're in a war situation, that you compartmentalize all your emotional feelings. You kind of.
When I think of it, George, I was 21 years old. So I had no military experience, and my only military experience was to come back from school. That was it. Huh? So I had, but when you are 21, you act. And I was reacting according to the circumstances without thinking too much. You don't think too much about anything. Otherwise, you will never be able to do anything. I had some very, let's say, funny experience or disagreeable experience. I had a wonderful, to tell you exactly what the resistance can do. I had one of my friends, Mark, he was what I call my right arm. When I needed something, I said, Mark, blah, blah, blah. And he had a cousin who was in charge of a small airfield that I could see from my grandmother. My grandmother was on top of a hill, the little village. I could see it from my grandmother's garden, an airfield. And that airfield was a military airfield closed by the French when we lost the war, And there was one man, under officer, in charge of, surveying, if you want, the whole thing. And one day, that man, Ron, was the cousin of my Mark, and Mark ran right away to me and said, the Germans are reopening the airfield. Their trucks are already on the airfield. First thing I did, to my boss, Pearl, I say, hey, the Germans are reopening the airfield. Let London know that. And the next morning, my dear, the next morning, at 9 in the morning, I heard the noise of about 40 super tanker, you know, the plane, the American plane, and fighters. And the fighter, I told you we were on top of the hill, he came at exactly at my ears. And I make a sign to him, I said like that, and he answered me, the pilot had the time to answer, yeah. So they did destroy that, they did absolutely bomb completely the airfield. An airfield. That was very important, huh?
Yeah.
So they did destroy it. The next morning, I give the information at 5 o'clock at Pearl, and next morning at 9 o'clock, the airfield was completely destroyed.
What would have happened if the Germans took over that airfield?
No,
Would
they
it
could have
given
used
them-
it. They could have used it, you know, to take plane to England or whatever it is.
Supplies?
Whatever it is, you know, they could use an airfield. So the airfield was completely destroyed. So that's, you know, the type of thing that the resistance can do. I did it, so some other could do exactly the same thing. That, you know, it's very possible. Now, the Germans, once more, the Germans were of two kinds. One day we were advised that there was 6 or 7 Germans along the railroad because one of the group was exactly, France has 2 big airlines, not airlines, airways. North-south and east-west. And we were almost at the crossing of that. So we heard that 6 or 7 Germans were walking along the railroad to come back to Vierzon. So we said we must go. So I went. I told that to Vanier, one of the commanding officer of that group over there. And I say, hey, I'm not supposed to fight, but I'm going to observe what you are doing. So I went with them, you know. And those Germans, we find them, they were laying on the ground with their guns out of their hands, completely out of their hands, laying on the ground. And when we surrounded them, they smiled. They were happy to be.
Did you take them prisoners?
Oh, yeah, of course. But they were happy. The war was over.
And how were German prisoners treated? How were German prisoners treated in France?
Oh, no, they were very happy. You know, they were in the woods. Of course, there was a little fence. They were not trying to escape because they knew very well they could go nowhere. Well, especially walking, they would go nowhere. So they were quiet. They were waiting for the lunch. They were waiting for everything, and they were well fed. They were fed like the guy of the.
They got wine?
Same thing. They had wine. They got everything. So Germany, forget it, huh? Come on.
So after, when World War II ended, did you ever believe the thing that Hitler killed himself? Or did you think he escaped?
My idea is very difficult to say something. Some say that he went to South America, you know, the submarine and blah, 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 with photograph of the I don't know. What I know, you know, the Germans were very, very, very well organized up to the D-Day. Before I can say that because it's a very disagreeable souvenir for me, but which shows exactly what they were able to do. I was living with my grandmother on a little village, but at the exit of the village, and it was some kind of a triangle. The road were making a triangle, and it was the top of the hill, and you could see, you know, could see the airfield, for example. And one morning, I get out, and there was 5 or 6 houses on one side. The other side was the farm of Mark, and my grandmother and her house, 1 or 2 houses, and that was it. I felt somebody calling me, saying hello, not calling me, but say hello. Oh, you're all surprised, you know, to say hello in the morning like that, a woman. So it was a very nice woman. I pass over all the relation, you know, I was 21 years old. I thought that maybe, you know, she was nice looking and alone. She was escaping the town. And finally, you know, from one conversation to another conversation, to a glass of wine, from another glass of wine, she asked me if I had some men, if I was in the resistance, and if I have some men with me. And I let her know. Yes, I say yes, let her know. But I asked Pearl, my boss, I say, Pearl, do you know if there is another British mission? That woman knew so well all the organization, and she said that she was from a British mission. So I went to Pearl and said, Pearl, is it possible that there are two British missions in the same area? And Pearl, of course, called London, and it was absolutely impossible. No way that it could exist. And it went to the thing that woman gave me an appointment with my men 3 days. Not only that, she made we walk to visit the field where the dropping of the armaments were, and it was our field, the field where we were doing it. And she said, "Here is where we will do it. And you bring all your men, and all your men will. You bring all your men, eh? You bring all your men." I didn't bring my men. I bring myself with Mark, and my left hand, Eugene. And my dear, it's a very terrible to say something like that. It ended up that I put my gun on her head and I killed her. So, the resistance, you see the resistance. I am a guy of, at that time, 21 years old. I'm out of college and I killed someone. Killed someone right there, huh? As close as you are. And it was impossible because it was her or us. And me at that time was something like 22 men. So that was the life of 22 men. If we had gone, we were surrounded by the German. You can be sure we were taken out by the German. So there was no way to do otherwise. I killed her. So, you know, it's nice to talk about the resistance and the You know, when you are my age, 21 years old, it's no fun to do such a thing. It doesn't go over my culpability. I have no culpability about that because, you know, once more, her or my 22 men, and I prefer my 22 men and myself, by the way. Huh? Come on, you know the Germans were no fun. Huh? They were torturing you and all that. Huh? So you know, so the resistance had to do with all that type of thing.
So World War II, it obviously shaped your anti-war stance today.
Oh, absolutely, mate. I cannot stand the wars, you know. When it's terrible when you look at once more, I also say, look at the written history of humanity. Written history of humanity doesn't go further than 5,500 years, no more than that. The rest is prehistory. But when you look at what did happen during those 5,000 years, nothing else but wars. Always, always, always. And you end up in World War I, and World War I, all the fighters of World War I were the masters, or the director of the country, were the same family. And they were fighting against each other. Fighting against each other was 11 million men. 11 million men died because the cousins could not agree between them.
Just imagine those 11 million men, if they fought against the people in charge. Imagine what the world would be like today.
But you know, it was 11 only military men, only men. At the end of the war, there were no more males. All the males were dead on the trenches, you know. So you see the war with Hitler, 50 or 55 million dead people because the civilians are dead. World War I, the civilians were not dead. With Hitler, everybody was dead.
Yeah, they seem to have changed the philosophy of how you win a war nowadays is you kill as many civilians as you can. You don't go
plus
after them.
Plus don't forget, you have the tools to do it. In the old past, you didn't have the tools to kill so many people. No, you have the bomb, you have everything. The next war will be beautiful with atomic bombs. That's not 1,000 guys living. It's 1 million guys living at one time, you know. So when you write that history, you see that basically the mind, it means one thing. It means that the mind of humanity, the mind of the leaders did not change. Did not change through one reason or another one. Since the beginning, there is a war. The war in the family, World War I. The family, World War I. 11 million dead. But you know, for any pretext it can be, you have always, always, always wars. The leaders don't consider the peace is wars. Always talking about wars, the army, the blah, blah, blah. Always. Nothing else. And today, when you look at the United States, more than half the budget goes for armaments. Armaments against whom? To do what?
Yeah, I don't get it. And now they're going to start having robot soldiers.
Yeah,
Who gets to control them?
Yeah, exactly. But it's always the same thing. You have only few people who control the whole thing. It's always the same thing. Middle Ages of today, it's always the same thing.
Well, they don't get to control everything because we're on the Radio Free Will podcast, and it's a podcast for sovereign people. People have the choice whether to fight in these wars or not. And what I would like to do is encourage everybody to just
But
stop.
how could you, World War II, how could you, once more I was 18 years
Well,
old.
you were
something
in
like
a
that.
different situation.
Yeah, but how can you refuse, how can you get out of that story and look at it happening out of you? It's impossible. For 3 years, more than 3 years, I spent my time just to not to be taken by the German. When I was 18 years old, there were signs, there were, everywhere on the walls, people 18 years old must go to Germany, not as a prisoner, must go to work in the German, German industry. And if you go to work, we will liberate one soldier. You go to Germany, we liberate one soldier for you. But I was 18 years old, my dear. It was an obligation.
Yes,
to
of course.
do. So
'Cause
I can go.
Your country was attacked. Your family, your whole community was attacked and occupied. It's very understandable. But nowadays, it seems like all the wars that are started nowadays are started by the U.S. government. For whatever reasons, I have no idea, because it doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Listen, dear, be very honest. All that is totally, completely by people who have no education. I'm sorry to say that. They have no historical education. They have no nothing. America is a country of non-educated people, if I can say so. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth. You have very, very few people, and among the leaders, when you listen to the leaders, you have no one leader talking about the reality of things. They are just fighting each other to know who will be in a place there or in place there. But who is talking today about the danger, for example, because it is a danger, artificial intelligence? Who is talking? Nobody is talking about that. You are going to see the next election, nobody will talk about that. And that is the main...
There is one guy, Andrew Yang, who's running for president in the Democratic primary. He talks about it.
Yeah, but you know very well that he talks about it, he may be elected about it, and forget it after that. The party is the party. And in America, you have only two parties. Out of that, you do not exist.
Well, the thing is, you make an industry out of robots. It's really hard to stop industry, because then it starts lobbying the government and going for government contracts and stuff. It's really hard.
Who is beneficiary? Who are the beneficiary of armaments? 54 or 55% of the budget goes to that, but goes to that for which profit? Who is profitable? Who takes profit out of that? Because you have to build those armaments, and if you are a builder of armaments, you make money making armaments. So it's very good to have plenty of armaments.
And you have to use up the armaments so you can justify building more.
Absolutely. So it's a no end. It's exactly the same story since the beginning. Is the same story.
And who do they use the armaments against? Poor people of color.
Oh, come on. The poor people don't think they are obliged to go. You say, hey, you go, otherwise, hey. You were obliged to go in the army in France, everywhere. The army was an obligation. Before the war, before World War II, my dear, before World War II, At the point, it was 3 years, obligation of 3 years in the army. After that, it was 2 years, and when I was young, it was 1 year. I didn't go to the army, I was too young. 1 year, but an obligation. It's an obligation, all the males, army.
All right, so let me ask you a philosophical question. All right, so it's horrible that France was occupied and you had to fight off the German soldiers. Did France learn anything? Because they went and started occupying other countries themselves.
You never learn. Don't you know that?
Right.
You never learn. You will read this story in 100 years from now. You will learn exactly, you will read exactly the same story that the World War II, World War I, and the war before. The 70, the war of 70, and so. All the wars go for the same reason and the same way. So one is stronger than the other one and win. The greatest disaster of World War I was two people, Georges Clemenceau in France and Wilson in the US. And those two people created the condition for Germany to have Hitler coming to say we are going to get out of that. Because they ruined Germany. They ruined the loser is obliged to pay, and to pay what he could not pay because he didn't have the money. No way. So the exigence, the exigence of paying that, so they create the condition for a guy like Hitler. Absolutely.
Yeah, but what about my question? Was there like an anti-war movement in France when France was occupying Africa or Vietnam?
Oh, a lot of people were against.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people were against. That was stupid. Come on. There is no more stupid war than the war in Vietnam. That type of war. For what? Why did the French go over there first? First it was French. Why did they go over there? Why? Because that was the country of rubber. And that was the development of automobiles, and automobiles need tires. And rubber make tires.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to buy the rubber from?
No. You possess it, and come on.
No, but it would have been.
You always have the guys who will demonstrate that if they own it, it will work. If you just give it to the country, it will go one day, it will not go the next day, it will. If you have people who direct the thing, you will be obligatory. You will have what you expect from it. So the French took Indochina just to make rubbers. So why did the Americans go after that, after the French, when we lost? For what? The most...
Well, they claim that they're trying to stop communism, but...
Communist, no. I don't accept that. You see why? I know very well. We stop communism everywhere. Huh? We stop communism everywhere. Only one guy stopped communism. He was smart. The Marshall Plan, rebuilding the cities to avoid all the poor population But no, that is not the problem. The problem is that why do we fight? Communism is a doctrine. It's an idea. But we have no other way to fight an idea than with guns. It's illogical.
Yeah.
You don't fight communism with guns because they may have guns fight bigger than yours. That's possible. Why fight with guns something which is completely abstract, an idea? But America doesn't have the mind to fight with ideas against an idea. And I am a good American. No, come on.
Yeah, and both the French occupation of Vietnam seemed to really hurt the French people, and it certainly hurt the American people, the Vietnam War. We still haven't recovered from that war.
But after the World War, there was all the wars. The little fight that you don't even know about, we are fighting things that you don't even know today. I'm sure that what we do, I'm not sure that you know what we are exactly doing. The wrong idea, if you want, in my opinion, is once more, you cannot fight ideas with guns. That's impossible. And that's what the Americans believed, that you can fight ideas with guns. So we went war absolutely everywhere, war that goes absolutely nowhere. absolutely nowhere. We lost absolutely everything, Laos and all that. So that's stupid. That absolute stupidity. And I'm sure that you're not going to listen to anyone talking about that for the election, or talking
Well,
about the
that
armaments.
is true. We haven't heard any of that.
You have never heard any of that, and if it goes on like that, you will never hear about it. And it will not be 54%, it will be 55% of the budget for the armaments.
All right, we're coming to the close of our podcast today. And but I feel like I just started getting you wound up. We're going to, there may be some interruptions in the podcast over the next couple of weeks, but we hope to, you'll join me when I have some free time, right?
Yes,
And-
oh,
and,
absolutely.
So you have a birthday coming up?
Yes, my dear, because I am only, I should say, I don't want to think of it. I don't think of it, and I should think of it to act in a reasonable way. I am 97.
Well, congratulations. I hope to celebrate with you next week.
So, George, it's why I can talk about being in the resistance in France. You know, D-Day is not yesterday. Eh?
How many people do you think are left from the resistance?
From my area, I am the only one remaining.
Wow. So it's a blessing that we get to spend time with you. And I'm glad that we're doing this podcast. Folks, if you're interested in learning more, Michel, you've written your memoirs. It's in this book.
Not in this book. It's on another book. It's in the, yeah, this one is no good.
But this is René's War.
Yeah, René's War. René's War, you can find it at Amazon.
And it's covers a lot more in depth of the material that we...
No, you see me on the cover of the last edition.
Oh, really?
I am with some other guys. You can see me.
All right, so folks, you can, maybe I'll see if I can find a picture. It's the same title. It's René's War.
Yeah.
You can find it on Amazon. And if folks want to get in touch with you, they can get in touch with you how?
Michel Mockers, one word, at gmail.com.
And you have a website?
no-pennies.com.
Okay.
We're with no pennies, my dear.
Well, you can see the budget of the podcast is right in solidarity with your party. Thank you, Michel, for being
No, I
on
must
today's
thank you,
show.
George, to give me that occasion to talk to nice people.
Okay, so folks, join us again next week, and we'll have another edition of Radio Free Will. Bye.